Hello and welcome to Chanakya's Face Off. Today we have with us a very eminent personality, the co-author of the recent sensation, Snakes in the Ganga. We have none other than Ms. Vijaya Viswanathan, who's also a great expert in Indic studies. Welcome to Chanakya, ma'am. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. It's an honor to have you here. Mm, to start with your book, ma'am, what is your key inspiration to do your work in this book?
I've been associated with Rajiv Malhotra ji for a while now. And as probably many people know, he has been fighting this civilizational war for many decades now, giving up his career and all of that, and sort of dedicated his full time to this pursuit. And as we work on many projects, a lot of insights sort of come up. We begin to connect some of the dots, and we realize that there is a bigger pattern, a machinery that is behind some of these breaking India forces. Many people may be aware of Rajiv Ji's first book on breaking India, which was a revelation to most people. And so this is sort of a new way of looking at the same problem, which hasn't gone away, but it's only just gotten more sophisticated. So we thought it was important to bring it out in a form of a book because of the overwhelming dots that we had connected, and it was a story that needed to be told. So that was sort of the reason why we brought out the book. In fact, it was a very large book, and we somehow made it to 900 pages. And we had cut out a lot of a lot of material, but wanted to bring this overarching story of breaking India 2.0.
Yeah, looks still big to people like me who are slow readers, but even I'm not able to skip. I've started reading it. I should be honest with you. I haven't completed. I've started reading it,
But
but
you
even
can
for
read
me,
every,
it's.
Rajiv ji in many of his talks has talked about how to go about reading this book. So if
Mhm.
you read the first 40 or 50 pages of introduction, and then every chapter
Introduction.
you can just read the first page, I mean, the first summary in the first couple of pages, you should get a good idea as to where your interest lies and where you want
Right.
to dig in deeper, but you'll get an overarching view of the narrative
No,
that
I'm
we're.
finding each page useful. I'm not able to skip. Honestly, I'm just going through it, deliberately, very slowly.
Yeah, it isn't like
So.
a ready reckoner in the sense we've done. This is not a book that shows off language or scholarship or any of that. It is more like a ready reckoner that if you're wondering what's wrong with education, you can see. If you're wondering what's happening to Ashoka Kriya, if you are wondering, so you can just sort of zoom in into some of the areas that you're interested in, and it's written in a very easy to read fashion with diagrams and illustrations, just to sort of make the reader understand that this is a complex system with many moving parts, and here is how you can put your hands around it.
Yeah. I have my next question like this, ma'am. So there is a lot of talks about the critical race theory and a lot more. So what to a common man, not just in India. So to a common man's from a common man's viewpoint, what is critical race theory and how is it going to have an impact directly on his day-to-day life from a country's perspective, from a society's perspective? Yeah, probably it will have a, I don't know, but I just want to hear from you what it would mean to a common man.
So, in very, very simple terms, and I'm probably not doing justice, is that critical race theory assumes that the reason we don't have equal outcomes, and these equal, when I say equal outcomes to whom? It's based on identity categories, and these identity categories are very synthetic oftentimes. And so you could have gender based, you could have sexuality based, whatever. Yeah, so different artificial identity categories, and we have a system. And when the results come out of the system, they're all not equal. Some people do well, some people don't do well, whatever. And the reason you have that kind of inequality of outcome is because, not because there's everybody puts in different amounts of work. Some people are just pure lucky, which we call, which in in a dharmic sense we would say it's just adrishta palam. You just lucky or fortunate. Some people have absolute skills and intelligence in certain fields, which are, which we all know that even when we have children, multiple children from the same gene pool, some are, one is better in one subject, the other is better in some other subject, one relates to people better, one relates, is a math genius, another is terrible in something. And that's how nature is diverse in its competence, skills, the looks, how it manifests. So that's nature, and we all know that inherently. It's common sense. But critical race theory says, if the outcome is not equal, it means the system itself is racist, regardless of whatever you do. So you could give reservations, you could do this, you could do that, and make sure the entry point is made equal for everybody, or even advanced, some groups are advantaged over others. But if the outcome is still remains unequal, then there is a problem with the system itself. The system is inherently biased. So in the US, you talk about, how it's
But don't you feel that is not that is not completely false in all cases?
see, there are ways of having equity. When you say equity as such, in the US has its own issues of race and racial issues.
Yes.
And I might also add that the US has come a long way in rectifying a lot of these issues.
Yeah.
So, but to call an entire institution as racist now, for example, the US they say, yeah, affirmative action and all is good, but it's not really working well, because blacks are still not in the managerial positions, or women are not in higher up in management. Now there's a huge study done in Scandinavia, where everything is egalitarian. There are no stumbling blocks to women to pursue any career they want. And this huge study showed that the more egalitarian a society gets, you actually find these differences even more. You find in the Scandinavian countries that women gravitate towards people oriented work, like
Jobs. Mm.
school teachers and nurses and psychologists and things like that. And men gravitate towards more STEM things oriented jobs.
Mhm.
So it has nothing to do with, and that's why you probably don't have enough women in management of companies and things like that, because
Mhm.
women gravitate towards certain fields naturally. There's a natural proclivity to those fields. So it doesn't mean that the system is biased. Even in the Western thing itself, it shows. So the whole idea of equality itself is gone. Where everybody, so Martin Luther famously said that, don't judge a person by the color of the skin, but judge him by the character, the content of his character. But even that, Martin Luther King is not good enough for the woke mob today, where you have to look, you have to judge everybody by these false identities, whatever that they might be. So when you have outcome that is not coming out the way you want to, you can't just say that the system is rigged without giving any scientific
Evidences.
evidence
Yeah.
of why this is happening. There could be
Yeah.
some internal bias, but if it is shown in a nice way, in a constructive way, then it helps everybody. Right now, so for example, in the US, the thing is, math has become very white and patriarchal. So the idea of math itself is considered whiteness, and we should do away with mathematics, because it's a white thing or an Asian thing. And that is sort of ridiculous, right? Mathematics as a subject has no bias. uh,
You can't paint a
so
subject at least.
yeah, and there are different but the same, again, but the same logic does not apply to, say, blacks being good in basketball, and there are not enough Asians there, because they do have an advantage, you
A
know uh,
physical strength, yeah,
physical
inherent
strength, and
physical
they have,
strength.
and it takes a lot of mind body coordination and agility in those fields. Sports is not easy. Sports is as much mental as it is physical. And
Mhm.
that way, the way of coordinating mental faculty with physical prowess is only some people have that skill. So why don't you apply critical race theory to that? And then, but nobody will watch sports if you do that, because we are all, we're all human. And in fact, even women's sports versus men's sports, you have more people watching men's sports. The stakes are higher in sports that have men, because there are more advertisers. The game is really, at its best.
It's
uh,
fierce and it's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas, women's sports don't bring in that kind of money. So can you blame anybody for it? No, we all actually you know want that, and we need to celebrate the greatness of competence in various fields, and not feel the sense of inadequacy. So going back to what you talk about critical race theory is, so far we have looked at equality of opportunity, and we've all stood for justice and equality of opportunity on all fronts. Whereas now, with critical race theory, they are saying equality of outcome. So we don't care what the opportunities are, we don't care, but the outcome should be same, regardless of the other variables of talent, skill, hard work, luck, many things that go into it. They're saying that we should have equality of outcome, which now seems to be unfair. And the way to achieve it is to actually physically take the resources. So take the admission seat or something else from one group and reassign it to another. And this is going to cause a lot of divisiveness in society,
Have
because
you not, it's just a curious question. Have you not faced pushbacks telling this, the book and what it talks about is against the reservation and,
actually,
stuff like that?
we are not against reservation either. But
No, no, I see that. No, my question is, have you not seen such criticism? Like, it's because it's very sensitive for any common man to understand it.
no, but when it comes to it actually affects the common man, because there are many families in India. For example, take the IITs, the JE exam. Many families, they sacrifice a whole lot for those high school years for their children. There are parents that are
Who
sending
save money for
save
sending to
money,
IITs?
sending
Yeah.
them for tuition classes and training classes, and there's so much sacrifice by the entire family. And tomorrow, if someone says that there's no need for entrance exams at all, or should we even, that's what the Supreme Court justice even asked, said, should examinations be the only criteria for getting into the IITs? And that's a stunning statement, because then on what other basis would you allow students in? So this is, I'm not talking about the different standards of entry into IIT for different groups, and that's also something we should question. So if you have reservations in IIT, and then they come out, and then you have reservations in the job market as they enter government jobs or whatever, and then you have so one has to question, is this quota system even working? So if I allow you into the higher education system with a lower quota, assuming there are some uh, problems that certain marginalized groups have, and to overcome that, we sort of lower the bar a little, fine. But having lowered the bar and having gone through the 4-year course, you should come out as whatever, right? But there should be no difference between these
And,
candidates.
and
But
coming out can only be to the best of that person's ability and not to the extent of
and
what you wanted.
exactly, and so when you start giving quotas, which means that this is inherently not working. So again, you
Right.
give a quota. So what happens is, we losing track of excellence. Number one, it affects the nation. Number two, the people in marginalized groups who are actually really good and are like the best of the best, people look down upon them as well, because they think, oh, you're a product of a quota. In fact, that happens even in the US. There are many African Americans that that are brilliant, that do pass the necessary exams in flying colors, but everybody at the back of the minds has that notion that, oh, he must be a case of affirmative action that's come through the benefits of affirmative action. So which is actually demeaning to that person himself, right? It's very demeaning to, someone who has actually struggled hard and is bright and has achieved everything, and then yet society looks down upon him like, this must be a quota case.
Yeah.
So I think it hurts the community that it purports to to help. And so we should go down, you know to the community and actually find out what exactly would, what are the issues, and solve it at the grassroots level, instead of doing away with meritocracy with one, you know big
Yeah.
brush.
Got it. And there is a lot of mention about Harvard. In fact, there is a separate out of the four important, subdivisions. You're talking entirely about Harvard. Why only Harvard? Are there
So
not other American universities which you think this is happening at, and why only
yeah,
Harvard?
so there definitely are other American universities where this happens, but we pick Harvard because Harvard stands for, is a flagship university. It has a brand level, has a brand image that is incomparable to anything else, and is a center of power. In fact, the Kennedy School, the Harvard Business School, every school that you have in Harvard, they set the trend for, and the direction and the narrative for everything that happens in public policy, in business, in health, in public health. So they have a big say in the management of the world, if you will. They essentially control a lot of Harvard alumni and Harvard professors, and Harvard thought that comes out of Harvard is very far reaching, and it controls a lot of big worldwide, institutions worldwide. The alumni are very powerful, so it has the biggest endowment, and deep pockets. So Harvard essentially is sort of the epicenter from which these ideas emanate. And of course, everybody wants to be aligned with Harvard as well. So all the other, there are many universities, like we talk about Ashutosh Varshney of Brown University, who was also at Harvard before. So we focused on Harvard because of its, the tentacles of Harvard are many, and it's in all fields, all pervasive, and controls so many organizations and so many scholars and so many narratives, that Harvard is sort of the nest of the snakes.
Okay. So, and is that why the CGI is being criticized or, looked upon as, you know, probably his statements and other things? Because I have a question on the Chief Justice of India,
Mhm.
Dhananjay Chandrachud. And is it, you mentioned recently that, entrance of or impact of influence of Harvard into the judicial system. So, is that the only reason why he's also being
Actually, we really
questioned?
don't care where, Justice Chandrachud himself, is a product of Harvard. His son is also from Harvard and Stanford,
Yeah.
and it's not about being associated with Harvard. Where we
Yeah.
have an issue, in fact, in this book, we've named a lot of people or institutions, but it's because of the output that so we say Mittal Institute, but we don't really talk about. There are no ad hominem attacks. It's not a person. We're talking about the product that's coming out of this using our billionaires' money. So that's what we're talking about. So when you get to what Justice Chandrachud is saying, so he uses in his talk, he talks about how intersectionality, for example, is a tool that we should use to look at society. Now, intersectionality basically glorifies victimhood. So there are intersections. So if you are, black and gay, and or black and woman and trans and all of that, then you become,
The basically the union doesn't hold every category.
the victimhood is more. So the more
Yeah.
categories you belong to, your voice is given more power and is considered more authentic,
Mm.
because you're intersectional. You're a woman, and you're a trans, and you are black, and you are, so all these so-called, like I said, the synthetic the categories of
Okay.
who is oppressed, right? So essentially, intersectionality essentially glorifies this kind of victimhood. and says, okay, your voice is more authentic, and therefore you get to say, your. So if you and I are having an argument, it's not based on the content of the argument. It is because I am more intersectional than you are. I fall into many more categories, therefore my voice and my lived experience cannot be negated by anything you say, because you don't have the similar lived experience. So Chandrachud uses these kinds of Western ideas of intersectionality on on a country that is very diverse, very complex, with a very different history, very different civilizational ethos, and says that we need to solve society's problems using Western social theory, and that's what we are against. He's just straight away borrowing from Harvard kind of critical race theory and Ajanta Subramaniam and these kinds of people, and then saying, we this is how we need to apply and sort out our issues, and that's not how it works. And in fact, Chevy, if I remember correctly, Chevrolet, the car manufacturer, they had this very nice car in the maybe 80s or 90s. It was called the Chevy Nova, right? And Chevy Nova was then introduced to Latin America, a very popular car. It was introduced to Latin America, and in Latin America, nobody bought the Nova, you know. And then they realized after they launched the car that Nova means doesn't go, and no, as opposed to being something novel, I guess, as in Nova, and so the Latin Americans did not buy a car that was basically called the one that doesn't go. And they realized. So what I'm trying to say is, even a simple thing like
A
the
name.
a name, yeah, which is just randomly transferred to another country and then sold, that has an impact, because it just doesn't go with the language, the way people think, the civilizational ethos. So for Chandrachud ji to just kind of use some borrowed social science theories that are probably okay for the West, which actually is not also okay for the West, but as we see right now in the US, it's not. So these social theories are creating chaos, in the West, where where they were discovered, and they were brought to the fore. They're creating havoc and making society so divisive. So if it doesn't work even for the country that it was designed for, how do you think these theories are going to be effective for India, where India's civilizational history, the world view, our lens, everything is very different. Our people, it's just so diverse and so different from the West. And so to randomly apply a fashionable theory from Harvard doesn't bode well. It affects a lot of lives. So if you are a middle class person struggling, like I said, for to send your kid to IIT tutorial, to give him or her a chance in life, there comes the judiciary to say, hey, no need, let's bag entrance exams altogether. And what are you left with? So it will start affecting individual families in a big way. So that's what we need to be cognizant of.
Perfect. Thank you so much, ma'am. And my mostly my final question to you, ma'am, about your recent video on Niti Aayog.
Mhm.
About Mr. Tarun Khanna, who's also the head of the Mittal and Family South Asian Institute, and he's also a commission member of the Atal Innovation Mission. Like you've stated that he's also a visiting professor of one of the, I don't remember the name of the university, but it's a
Yeah,
Chinese European university.
CIEDS, yeah, CIEDS, yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah. So how do you see it as a threat, ma'am?
okay, so the again, in our book we don't name people, and there are no personal ad hominem attacks on anybody, and everybody that we've named are all doing legal. They're all great people, intelligent people that are doing good work, and they're doing nothing illegal, right? They're all, everybody's
Yes.
above board doing what they think that they should be doing. But what we are pointing out is the impact of such work on India's national security. So if you take a person like Tarun Khanna, he's a very highly regarded person in the Harvard Business School. He's now become the director of the Mittal South Asian Studies Institute at Harvard. Now, under his, I mean, he's in the South Asian Studies department. Now, he conducted a workshop, and he, in fact, edited a book called Making Meritocracy. I may be a little wrong in that,
Yeah.
where there's a, there is a conference that they have about meritocracy in India and China, and this happens in China. And so a lot of Harvard scholars, along with so the dismantler in chief, we call her Ajanta Subramaniam, who's at Harvard. She wants to dismantle the IITs because she thinks, so essentially this is Ajanta Subramaniam's thesis of Harvard. So she also presents, and Mittal Institute provides a forum for this, uh, where she says that uh, the upper castes of India want to be casteless. So what they do is they convert their castes into, into merit. And IIT is the apparatus that does that. So there are these upper class people entering this apparatus, and then they take all the caste, they take the caste privilege that they hold from one generation to another, and they convert it like how you convert rupees to dollars, right? They enter the IIT machine, they take the caste capital that they have, and they convert it into merit, right? And then they say, oh, everything is merit, and we deserve it, and we own it, and and so this, with this merit, they go overseas to America, again taking the currency. Now they've got dollars, like they have merit now, and then they use it to climb up in America. And so IIT is this machinery that makes it helps the upper caste convert this caste capital into merit. And so these are like, whoa, where did you come up with this? But these are all Marxian ideologies that are being applied to caste.
Ma'am, curious question. Has this been eliminated in Harvard? How do you get enrolled to Harvard? Is it not through merit?
It's not through merit, of course not. Harvard, in fact, if you have a child, all the Asians, that Asians, Indians, Chinese, all of them have a very hard. In fact, there's a court case with Harvard where
Mm-hmm.
they say that there's a reverse discrimination of Asians in the admissions process in Harvard. So in all these schools in America now, merit has totally gone. Asians have, if you're an Asian, you're at a disadvantage. You need 400 points more in your SAT scores than than a Black Hispanic student. You also you're considered that as students without personality. That's what Harvard, the Harvard files essentially revealed from the court case. So there is blatant discrimination against Asians in the admissions process, no doubt. Yeah,
Yeah.
undergraduate admissions process, and it's also getting to the graduate. Before, it used to be that graduate admissions in STEM areas were not, did not have these sort of quotas. They don't call it quotas, but everybody knows there's a quota. But now it's entered even the graduate admissions process.
So has there been a movement on this? Is also again intersectionality, right? You're a Asian, you're having some good scores, and this falls under their own
No, but
intersectionality
you're
theory.
not a,
Has
but you're,
anyone not?
no, but you're considered. So this is not the intersection. So who decides who are the victim groups, right? So Asians are
Right.
considered white adjacent, in fact. So now, because it's inconvenient to have Asians doing well, although Asians are brown, they are now they call them white adjacent because they behave like white people. So these are Marxist ideologies, and there is just no way to say this is full of no gobbledygook. This is rubbish. What nonsense is this? You and I experience the same amount of racism like anybody else in this country, and but then you are not considered a victim. So there is a mafia out there that decides who's a victim and who is not. So Asians are
Hmm.
considered white adjacent, and that's why the Harvard lawsuit happened, for the admissions. But admissions, the discrimination against Asians in admissions is a very well known thing. Ask any parent who's trying to put a child through
Enroll the kid.
into a college. They will give you a year full of of what you of all the discrimination that happens. But Asians somehow figure other ways out, work hard. They they say, okay, undergrad somewhere, grad school, we'll do something, and they kind of, pull along. But getting back to Tarun Khanna and Harvard. So we have nothing against Tarun Khanna, but so this is the idea of meritocracy that Ajanta Subramaniam has for the IITs, and she wants to dismantle the IITs, and so they have this to continue this discourse. They they have a Shanghai meritocracy workshop where the Chinese all are very happy with their kind of meritocracy. They want to be the best in STEM. They want, they are very proud about the history of meritocracy, whereas the Indians, so Harvard roped in some scholars from Ashoka University. So we have to train all these people in these ideas. So that's how the machinery starts kicking in. So there is a narrative that's put out. You train other scholars in this narrative and then send them out into the field. They will then recruit, have their students, and then they will have those students become officers in government and policy and this and that, and slowly change how India should look at merit, and destroy our engineering institutions that we very, very, we've struggled to build these very, very good institutions. And this is where it's coming from. So Tarun Khanna was that. And then Tarun Khanna is also part of the China European International Business School, CEIBS. Now,
Mm.
the CEIBS has just popped up from nowhere in the past decade, and it's risen up the ranks. Yeah, in terms of a business school. Now, China pumps in a lot of money into that, and it is to teach w- business leaders from all over the world how to work with China. So they are trying to tell you, this
Mm.
is what we are, and this is how you need to understand us. So we tell you how China has to be, so that how China has to be looked at, so that you can do work business with us. Yeah,
Mm.
that's the purpose.
Interesting.
But the CCP essentially funds this along with the European Union. Now, Tarun Khan is also a thought fellow or something like that over there. And as you know, the CCP, the CCP, spying and the CCP are, go hand in glove. So anywhere that they go, the one of the big issues is, is spying. Whether they send their students to America, there's a big lawsuit. And there was I think the FBI had this case against some Harvard again involved, of some professors being compromised, and taking nanotechnology and all of that and stealing and giving to China. There have been other Chinese PhD postdoc students that have stolen technology and gone back home and have been, there've been stories on that in the news. There's also, if nothing else, there is, now you see the latest thing on TikTok. So TikTok openly says that they spy on phone or anything, any device that it is on. It collects data, and the Chinese spy. Now, last week or 2 3 days ago, the US government said that TikTok will be banned from US government devices because of this problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it's no it's no new news that the Chinese are spying,
That's right.
and will use every ammunition that they have to spy, to and to undermine governments and foreign nations. Now, we are not saying that any of this is happening, but we are saying that there is a potential link. So if you have someone who is working with the Indian government, who's also a fellow at a Chinese funded, a CCP funded institution in Europe, and he's in Harvard, and the kind of research that they put out is anti meritocracy and caste, and the Niti Aayog has given sensitive databases to Harvard. I mean, population databases have been given to the Population Institute at Harvard. I mean, why? Why would you give so much of our data? Is the new oil, like people say, it's a new gold in this present day AI based technological world. So why would you give such sensitive databases on our population to Harvard? And Niti Aayog has been doing all of this. Uh, so we find these connections uncomfortable. it's not only uncomfortable, but so when you bring in a consultant, right, you look at the track record. So when I'm bringing a guy to fix my house, I want a track record to say, hey, has he done this? You don't want a guy that has supported dismantling of the IITs to come in to help you, right? It doesn't make sense. And you don't want a guy that's, also working with the Chinese government to come and be part of your government. It is like, who do you who do you bring to fix your problems? So so you, and then you don't take these databases and give it to Harvard after after knowing everything that you know. See, the problems with databases is that the narrative, right, can be, you're giving the narrative in the hands of somebody else. So in Rajiv ji talks about this very nicely. During the British rule, a lot of our things that related to shastras, these manuscripts and everything was taken away to Europe. Now today, if our own scholars want to study anything, those manuscripts are all in the hands of the Western museums and Oxford and things like that. So you need permission from them to access your own history and your own records. So this kind of archives, right, the archives have been given to schools overseas. Even today, Harvard is the partition India, the Pakistan, India, during partition, they're doing a project now called the Partition Project at Harvard. So all they're collecting tons of data and archival information, everything, and that's now the archive of the the history of partition is in the hands of Harvard. So they can limit, they can control who has access to this archive, and the history of the future can be written, history in the future can be written by them, and they can give access only to certain people. Like Ambedkar's I think he's left some records of his writings and everything in Columbia University, and Columbia University says that they'll give it only to Ananya Vajpayee, the scholar, and she has access to it. No one else has access to it, of what Ambedkar said. So your country's history and records and narrative is in the hands of somebody else. So when you give these kinds of population data and all of that, it's a dangerous thing, because people can use to manipulate you. People can use it to make friction within your country, and that's what's happening. See, critical race theory and all these social sciences that that the West has come up with is actually not solving the issue in the West itself. See how divided America is today, you know and it's not solving American problems. So why would you bring in scholars from there to solve Indian issues? India has enough brain power to to sort out. I'm not saying the problems are not there. We don't deny, and I'm all we are saying is we have enough brain power, and we are in touch with the reality of the situation as to what needs to be done, and we have representations of all the different stakeholders within the country. So we should use them to come up with solutions, not go to Harvard.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, ma'am. It was great talking to you, and thank you for patiently explaining a lot of things to us,
Yeah,
which could
thank you.
even be understood by any common man. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Pleasure
Namaste.
having you. Thank you. Namaste.